Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I hope you guys are all doing well and are healthy and happy. Today I want to talk about a watch that Omega released back in 2019. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it. I had a great chance to get hands-on with this piece, and I'm excited to tell you guys a little bit more about it, my thoughts on it. This is, of course, the Omega No Time to Die Seamaster. It was released back in 2019 along with the Daniel Craig film, the last James Bond movie that he's featured in. And it's an interesting piece. Stylistically, it obviously resembles the Seamaster Professional, the one that's been on James Bond's wrist since Pierce Brosnan debuted with the watch in GoldenEye back in the 90s. It takes on that same shape, that same form and fashion. However, the biggest difference obviously is going to be the bracelet, the material used, and then the dial details and bezel details and materials. And we'll get into all that, and I'll talk about the wearing experience, the specifications, as well as some of the pros and cons. The case material and bracelet material are all rendered in grade 2 titanium. The watch is 42 millimeters in diameter, is 13.2 millimeters thick, which is half a millimeter thinner than the standard stainless steel Seamaster Professional, and the lug to lug distance is 50 millimeters with a lug width of 20 millimeters. Now, what's important to note is that this watch is actually almost 50% lighter than the standard stainless steel model at 96 to about 97 grams, whereas the stainless steel model on the steel bracelet comes in at 170 grams. So definitely very noticeable on wrist. When you put it on, you notice the lightness, you notice just how sleek it is, and that extra thinness definitely makes a big difference on wrist. This watch comes with a Milanese style mesh bracelet. The version that I got my hands on actually has a shorter bracelet length, so there's actually a little bit less overlap at the clasp that you will experience with the standard length bracelet. So it definitely makes it much more wearable for smaller wrists. And then this watch has a milled clasp with individual holes for sizing. Now on the case back, you're gonna see a Ministry of Defense arrow. This just kind of ties into James Bond's occupation as someone who's employed by the British Ministry of Defense. There's some other information here on the case back. 62 is like the year that the first James Bond film was released, 1962. Definitely very unique. It's a closed case back. You're not going to be able to see the caliber 8806 that is enclosed within. This is sort of a no-date version of the very popular caliber 8800. Now let's take a look at the dial details and the bezel, because this is what really truly sets the watch apart from the standard stainless steel model. You'll see that there is right off the bat, very warm lume to the indices, to the hands, the handset, the tip of the seconds hand, as well as the bezel. So this is sort of like an aged lume, a faux lume, if you will, but it's very warm, very deep. You'll see that on the indices themselves, it's sort of this vertical brushing pattern. And then the dial itself is sort of this darker brown grain texture that, resembles that look of aged material. That's really what they're kind of going for here, is something that looks a little bit more faded, a little bit more worn, that's seen many years of military service with James Bond. And then the materials for the dial and bezel is actually aluminum. So this will fade, this will age. In the case of the bezel, it will scratch over time. You'll notice there is a domed sapphire crystal. There doesn't appear to be as much AR coating on the top side of this crystal. You will catch a lot of glare and reflections, much more than the standard stainless steel model, which has tons of AR coating on the underside and the top side, so you can almost reach out and grab the dial, and that's not the case here. As far as the extras, this watch comes with a cloth case, a strap changing tool, and a NATO strap. This watch has a 120 click unidirectional bezel, same sort of action as on the stainless steel version. I have noticed that it's a little bit easier to turn. It turns a lot quicker than on the stainless steel model. and that can be a pro or a con depending on what you're looking for, but the original model definitely had a little bit more resistance, was a little bit harder to actually turn and manipulate. So there's the watch as a whole, as a package. Let's talk about the pros and the cons. Right off the bat, the biggest pro of this watch, in my opinion, is the wearability and the lightness. It is so much lighter. It has a much more comfortable feeling on wrist, and it also has a bit of a thinner profile, so it just has less of a footprint on your wrist. I would argue that this watch also has an added cool factor over the standard stainless steel model because of that extra tie-in to No Time to Die, with that being Daniel Craig's last film in the franchise and his supposed collaboration in designing this watch. Now let's talk about the cons. And the biggest con, which I actually had not mentioned, is the price. This watch is $10,000 at retail before applicable taxes, and that is a chunk of change, especially over the standard stainless steel model, which is $5,900 right now for the standard SMP on bracelet. And between these two price points within Omega's own catalog, you find the Seamaster 300, the Heritage model, at just over $7,000, the Planet Ocean at just over $7,000, and the watch that gets compared to the most to the Seamaster, the Submariner Date, retails for $10,250, which is just a hair over this titanium model. Of course, availability is a very hot topic right now. You just can't buy Rolexes at list price, but I think Omega went a little overboard with the pricing of this model. You know, is this watch worth $4,000 more than the standard steel Seamaster? I'm going to give you my honest opinion after experiencing both of these watches, and my opinion is it's not worth it. It's not worth that extra premium. It is a very cool watch, and like I mentioned, it has that cool factor. It has that extra wearability, but at that significant of a price premium, just go with the standard stainless steel model, or try to find this watch in the secondary market. Certainly let someone else pay for that depreciation. I think they're floating around $6,000 to $8,000 depending on the example and the condition. Another big con that I've personally noticed is the rotor noise. This watch has a very loud rotor. The Cal 8806, I'm not sure if this is the case for any other watches that have this movement, and you don't have to shake it a whole lot to get that rotor noise. I've noticed that if I just so much as flick my wrist while I'm talking, if the room is relatively quiet, you'll hear the rotor, which is just not acceptable, especially at this price range, and something that you should be aware of. And then another big con for me was the poor legibility in some lighting conditions, especially when you're in a dimmer room when there's less natural light. The aged hour markers and the aged hands, in combination with the lack of AR coding, definitely make this watch not the easiest to read. It really kind of gets lost in certain lights and becomes almost impossible to read. This watch actually reads better in the dark than it does in natural daylight. So that is my take on the titanium Seamaster. I hope you guys found this review informative and helpful if you're shopping for this particular model. Like I said, there are plenty of other alternatives out there in the market, especially within Omega's own catalog. So in my opinion, the value isn't necessarily there for this watch, but it is a very interesting and cool release. And I definitely hope that Omega continues to go down this route as far as providing watches that are more wearable, in different materials, and offer just more choice for their consumers. But let me know what you guys think of this watch. Let me know if you think the price premium is justified. I think many people will side with me in that it's not, but there are some that really love this watch. They love the tie-in to James Bond. They love the wearability and the unique look and lightness of this watch. So with that being said, hope you guys had a great time with me here today, and I will catch you guys in the next review. If you have not had the chance to subscribe to the channel, I would very much appreciate it if you could join me along this journey and support the channel. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys real soon. Take care.